everyone. Good morning. We call to order the Lubbock Metropolitan Planning Organization. This is the Transportation Policy Committee meeting. It is Tuesday. It is March 18th in the year of our Lord 2025. It is 8:30 and a quorum is present. Want to acknowledge our safety procedures. As always, if something bad happens, we follow Jared. That's wherever he goes. When he runs, we run. That's the rule. We would like to acknowledge our, first of all, our public comments. Do we have any public comments, Ms. Walker?
No, we don't.
Okay, all right, we'll close public comments. But we do want to acknowledge all of our guests who are here today. Any special guests that we need to acknowledge? Yeah, we'll do that. Anyone else? We're good? All right, Mr. Warren, I'll turn the dais over to you for a special announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. A few changes recently at TxDOT. I'd like to announce Ms. Kylan Francis, our esteemed Director of Transportation Planning and Development, was promoted recently to the Deputy District Engineer position at our district here in Lubbock. Her replacement, Mr. Shelley Harris, stand up, Shelley, is the new Director of Transportation and Planning and Development for the Lubbock District. Shelley's been with TxDOT about 24 years, the last 14 of which have been as the District Design Engineer here in our Lubbock office, and we welcome you to the group, Shelley, and look forward to working with you. And one final announcement, Mr. Chair, Mr. Jeremy Deering, our Director of Transportation Operations at TxDOT, who would occasionally give safety data updates to this group, was successfully promoted to the District Engineer's position in the Abilene District. Oh, okay. So he is moving on up the ladder. And we are actively seeking a new Director of Transportation Operations. So any of you great traffic engineers with the city of Lubbock that are tired of working for Jarrett, the application's open till Friday. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the time.
Mr. Warren, thank you very much. And welcome aboard, sir. Welcome aboard. Item 5 on our agenda is to approve the January 21st, 2025 meeting, the minutes of the Transportation Policy Committee. I'll entertain a motion. Second. I have a motion by Councilmember Martinez Garcia, okay, and a second by Mr. Mandrell to approve the minutes as circulated. Any changes need to be made? Hearing none, call for the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 6 is to discuss and take appropriate action regarding the resolution 2025-02 adopting the fiscal year 24 Texas Department of Transportation Safety Performance Management targets pursuant to 23 C.F.R. 790.207A1-A5 to advance to the Texas Department of Transportation for action.
Good morning,
Good
Your
morning.
Honor and Policy Committee members. The Texas Roadway Inventory, which is published by TxDOT, reports that Texas has approximately 323,363 miles of highways, of which TxDOT maintains 80,997 miles. A tall order indeed when you talk about keeping Texans safe, especially when the current population of 30,029,572 is supposed to go to 47,342,417 by 2050. Suffice it to say that all states are required to develop and implement a statewide program called the Highway Safety Improvement Program, whose goal it is to prevent fatalities and serious injuries on all public highways, including all non-state-owned highways and roadways. The law also requires all state DOTs and MPOs to report annually on the progress toward achieving this goal and other recommendations contained in the HSIP. In the spirit of the mandated HSIP, Federal Highways has implemented what they call a Safety Performance Management Program called Safety PMs that establish the measurable performance outcomes for all federal safety programs. If you look in your agenda backup at Figure 1 on page 15, you will recognize all the PM measures that we talk about every year. The agenda item today is PM1, or safety targets. It measures 5 characteristics that are reported on a 5-year rolling aggregate basis that include the number of fatalities, the rate per 100 million VMT, the number of serious injuries, the rate of serious injuries per 100 million VMT, and the number of non-motorized fatalities and non-motorized serious injuries. Remember, the law allows the MPO to adopt their own targets if you want to, or to follow the commission targets that they set. Since 2018, you have elected to follow the commission's targets. Those targets are shown on Exhibit A, pages 19 and 20 in your backup. Also note that these targets for 25 are the same targets that we visited in 24. Federal Highways and TxDOT are currently in discussion about how these targets and the other PM targets are calculated, and advise that if any change is needed, they will let us know. Remember, the targets reflect a rolling 5-year average and are used to direct TxDOT to select projects that will help achieve the target numbers. As noted, fatalities seem to be going down. TxDOT reports 1,997 traffic-related fatalities in 2024, down from 2,065 in 2023 and down from 4,283 in 2022. Serious injuries, according to the footnotes in the chart, will remain the same as in 2024, as will non-motorized fatalities. The takeaway in the resolution is that if you approve the resolution, you resolve to plan and program projects that will contribute to the accomplishment of the Commission's targets. And with that, I'll take your questions if you have any. Otherwise, I would ask your support for the resolution in your backup.
Any questions for Mr. Jones?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Atkinson.
Thank you. Just real quick on 19 and 20. We're doing the 2025 target, which is what on these pages?
It's the highlighted targets, your yellow highlight. It's the same targets that we had for last year. And they look large, I agree, but it's all due to the rolling 5-year average. And these come direct from TxDOT and the Commission.
Okay, so on the first one, performance target, total number of traffic fatalities, the calendar year target for 2024 would be 3,046. Should that be 2025?
No, they're 2024. We're doing it for 25, but there are 24 targets because they didn't want to adjust them this year. They are adopting last year's same set of targets for 24, calling it 25.
where calendar year 2025 would be the same as 2024. I would think it would say, excuse me, I would think it would say calendar year 2025.
Is that your question about why the highlighted thing doesn't say 2025? Yeah.
We didn't change their paperwork. That came straight to us.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Warren?
Mr. Jones, maybe it helps, are you saying that 2024, let's say that's an actual number, 3,046, that now our goal is just not to get worse?
Just not to get worse.
Okay. So we're basically saying what we did last year, let's not do any worse.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Jones? If not, I will entertain a motion regarding the resolution 2025-02.
Move to approve.
Second. I have a motion by Mr. Atkinson. I have a second by Commissioner Dalby to approve resolution 2025-02. This is the TxDOT Safety Performance Management Targets. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the question. All in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7 is to discuss and take appropriate action regarding resolution 2025-03 to approve and advance the 2025 Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan targets for the Texas Department of Transportation for action. Mr. Jones.
Mr. Chair, I yield the floor to Mr. Mandrell. He's going to lead the parade.
Yes.
So exciting. So this is the item is very much what we just got finished doing from the highway standpoint. Same exact measurement, 5-year rolling average, looking at fatalities, injuries, and then in safety events as a whole. So it's split out between two modes of service, which are the fixed route bus line and then the demand response, which is anything ADA paratransit and/or the microtransit on-demand service. So, and it's all based upon kind of standardized across million revenue miles operated. So and essentially what we do is we take the 5-year rolling average, and then that sets our target for the new year. So going to I guess it's on page 24, fatalities, again, maintaining that at 0, been fortunate in that regard. Injuries, maintaining at 2.4, and then all safety events, which includes anything that's National Transit Database reportable, which are certain injuries, accidents, evacuations, fires, that sort of thing, setting those at 2.8 for the fixed route. Moving down to demand response, again, fatality 0, injuries 2.0, and safety events altogether 1.7. The one I didn't mention is that we have to track the mean distance between major mechanical failures, which are events where major mechanical failures mean engine losses. There's a major overhaul or repair that has to be done to the vehicle, and so that distance between major mechanical failures on the fixed route side is going up to 62,000 and 61,000 on demand response side. And then I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are already.
But your actual mean distance between the mechanical failures is in the 90,000 miles, is that right? Looking at page 23, the reporting year of 24. Got a marked increase.
The increase is due to the, we've got, so in the next agenda item, we'll talk about our transit asset management plan, and we've significantly enhanced the age of our fleet. And so that reduction, or that increase is due to new vehicles and fleet. I wish I had a better answer for you, but the calculation, when we put it in, this is a standardized form when DOT sends it to us, and it calculates this way, and it kind of sets that target. It's again based upon the 5-year rolling average, and that's probably why that number is where it's at. Because you look down 2020, we were at 30,000 miles between, and so that 61,000 is going to be the rolling average.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Mandrell?
Just
Yes.
one, Your Honor.
Oh, yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
So what's the difference between the baseline and the target? What's the baseline?
So the baseline is the 5-year rolling average
Okay.
number, and then we just take that number and
Okay.
either leave it the same as on the highways or just try to drop it a bit and not get any worse, as Mr. Warren says.
And my question is in relation to what kind of injuries did you have happening? You noted some injuries.
Yeah, so the injuries are anytime if somebody's boarding a vehicle, slip, trips, falls. Sometimes there's a securement issue to where maybe the passenger is on the fixture outside. We cannot require seat belts for ADA purposes, and so sometimes we have passengers refuse seat belts. Excuse me. And if there's a hard braking accident, they slide a chair. And it just depends upon the actual injury is transported from the scene. So they have to be transported via ambulance to seek other care. So it's more than just first aid. And so those fall into that categories for injuries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other questions? With no other questions, I'll entertain a motion on regarding Resolution 2025-03. I've got a motion. I have a motion by Councilmember McDonald. I have a second by Mayor McBrayer to approve and advance the 2025 Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Item 8, to discuss and take appropriate action regarding Resolution 2025-04 to approve and advance the 2025 Transit Asset Management Plan targets for the Texas Department of Transportation for action.
Again, Mr. Chair, I'll yield the floor to Mr. Mandrell.
Mr. Mandrell.
Okay. Similar to reporting safety targets, we do have to report on the useful life benchmark of our fleet. And so the exhibit on page 29 kind of takes us through those numbers. So we have to break it down between over-the-road bus is considered to be a fixed-route bus. Cutaways are kind of the body-on-chassis vehicles, and then vans are kind of the half-ton or one-ton kind of just regular van, not a chassis on body. But so you can see the fleet size there. The average age of our fleet on the bus side is 16.8, and that is for completing 2024. So that is not a considering. We did take some new bus delivery end of 2024, but those will be reflected in the 2025 because the cutoff is 9/30 of 24, so it's on a fiscal year reporting. And so these numbers are already looking better for 2025. We just couldn't report because of the cutoff time frame. So in the 2024, we ended with this 16.78 average vehicle age, which is 51.35% of our entire fleet being over the 14 years, sorry. And then the target for 25 is 42.67. That's a very specific calculation on that because we know that we've already taken delivery of vehicles to knock that down. So we should end FY25 at 42.67%, being over the useful life benchmark. Cutaway vehicles, we're at 7.22 years, which that is underneath us 10 years, so we have 0 over that threshold. Going down to the van line, we have an average age of 2.38. The ULB is 8, so we have 0 again. And then our non-revenue vehicles, these are just like staff vehicles and such, those are at 12.69 average age ending 2024. Those vehicles are 8-year useful life benchmark, so we have just under 95% of those exceeding the metric there. So with unknown replacement of those vehicles, we're leaving that as a 0% target. And then moving down to the facility, we do have to do a facility assessment. every 4 years, and as long as our facility rates as a 3 on the scale, we don't have to develop any measures to find funding to replace the facility or whatnot. And so the City of Lubbock Facilities Department did a assessment of the entire facility a couple years ago. It was rated as a 3, and so we're leaving that as is going into the new year. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Mandrell?
I have more of a comment. I just want to do kudos to your fleet services for maintaining your buses. That's pretty amazing that they're that age and still doing really well. So kudos to them.
Thank you. Just kind of a brief question, Mr. Mandrell. Of the 74 over-the-road buses you have, how many now are deemed as electric in the fleet? Because the electric fleet is, I think the first ones are about 4 years old, maybe 5?
We have two in fleet, and they were delivered to us in 2018.
18. 6 years old. Wow. We've been doing this that long. Okay.
Time flies when you're having fun.
It is, but just 2 electric.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Mandrell? If not, I will entertain a motion regarding Resolution 2025-04 to the 2025 Transit Asset Management Plan. I have a motion by Councilmember Martinez Garcia, and I have a second by Commissioner Dalby to approve and advance the 2025 Transit Asset Management Plan as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 9 is to discuss and take appropriate action regarding Resolution 2025-05 relating to a micro-simulation dashboard to facilitate the implementation of Task 2.1, that's Travel Demand Model, in the 25-26 Unified Planning Work Program in the 2025 Unified Planning Work Program. In the 2020. That's kind of the same now that I look at it. All right, Mr. Martin.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, councilmen and councilwomen. We're very grateful to be able to be here today to be able to discuss our opportunity to expand our tools. We do have in presence today Dr. Lu Hung Chow from TTU's Civil Engineering Department. He leads the group and the cohort that we'll be contracting with if approved. To give some background on the travel demand model, as outlined under Task 2.1 of the 25-26 UP or the Unified Planning Work Program, it's necessary for the MPO to regularly update our transportation demand model to reflect changes in infrastructure, population growth. The demand model needs periodic updates and is required to be updated every 5 years to maintain model accuracy, which includes revising functional class, adjusting traffic analysis zones, and updating assumptions on our urbanized area boundary. This ensures that our model accounts for current and future transportation demand, guiding investment decisions and infrastructure improvements. The last model update was done and completed in April of 2023. We are now preparing for the next update, which will begin, not be completed, but will begin in FY26. As part of this effort, the LMPO staff has been collaborating with TxDOT's Transportation Planning and Programming Division and the Texas Transportation Institute in their yearly transportation demand model workshops. These workshops play a pivotal role in maintaining our model accuracy. However, due to new projects that haven't been programmed in the past or haven't been implemented into the model, new transportation alternative zones that need to be added, and new proposed projects that are on the horizon, we need to be able to start an implementation by our staff this year to be ready for that proposal update of the following year. This model will be expanded to cover all of Lubbock County. some external roadways that will be coming into the model, and update the forecast year to 2027. By updating the model with the most current data, we ensure that this reflects the future transportation needs of our region. The agreement and contract that's being proposed was reviewed by Underwood Law Firm with minor revisions in the details. Basically, the revisions were just for the date of start. When we originally started this process, it took a little bit of time to be able to get through TTU's review process, as it has to go through the Dean and Chancellor's office before coming to us. A few details to highlight is that the total project cost would be $17,500, which is budgeted in fiscal years 25 and 26 in the UPWP. The cost and payment schedule is fixed and has an initial execution agreement of $5,250. Upon completion of the first 4 tasks, we'll pay a secondary payment of $10,500, and then upon final review and completion, we'll make the final payment of $1,750. The action that we're asking today from the Policy Committee is to approve the agreement with Texas Tech University and forward it to TxDOT for review. Upon approval, TxDOT University can and will begin the development of the simulation, which will ensure that our transportation demand model is up to date and enable us to continue improving the transportation planning and forecasting for Lubbock County. As such, I do stand here for any questions. We do have Dr. Liu here in case you have any questions on who from his staff and from his student body will be performing the tasks. But I'm standing here now if you have any questions concerning this.
Any questions for Mr. Lucero or Professor Liu? Yes. Mr. Mayor Rookbury.
So that transportation demand model, what's the deliverable out of that? What will it provide to us when all is said and done?
That's a really good question. What it does is it takes our current forecast year and moves it all the way up. So we have a current year of 2022, and we're going to move that all the way up to a forecast year of 2027, which we currently do not have. So it gives us an ability to be able to look in the future a year in advance, which is very important because what will occur with that 1 year is that when they start the update from TxDOT side, they'll take our 1 year and use that as a benchmark for a future calibration of the model. They will also implement roadways that have been brought forward into the TIP 10-year and the major thoroughfare plan. As you know, we recently updated that in August of last year, and a lot of those projects that were in those were accounted for in the model. But there are a few projects that were in there that aren't currently in our current model and are required by federal law for us to have that in the model. And so a good example of that would be the Shallow Water Bridge out in Shallow Water. That's in Lubbock County. It provides capacity and access to our region. And so we would put that project into the model. It would account for all the bond projects that the city of Lubbock is currently doing that weren't accounted for in the original model because the bond project did not exist. And so, things like that are little, but they have an impact on the actual model and the function of those travel projections.
Mr. Lucero, real quick, in the on page 47, the duration, you have dates of commencing on November 1st, 2024, completed no later than August 31st of 2025. Is that a typo? Is that correct?
So we that was a what we're going to do is we're going to move all the start dates to whenever this is approved, and then the cycle will begin from there, and then it will be moved forward accordingly. And so, unfortunately, we didn't have those in here, but all those cycle years will be moved forward 18 months. And so it was an 18-month project to begin with. It'll be a 1.5-year project to be completed. It can be completed prior to that. If they complete early, we'll be excited and happy to take it on and do that. It just gives us a buffer and a window. And so, yeah, those dates will be adjusted accordingly based off of the direction from our legal team.
Any other questions for Mr. Lucero?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Warren?
Mr. Lucero, would it be fair to say although the model is a required element of our planning process, basically in a nutshell, it's a tool that allows us to input proposed projects and show what effect those projects might have on other facilities around the metro area. Is that pretty much the purpose behind the model?
It is. That is one of the main purposes of the model, yes.
Okay, so we don't just go willy-nilly and say, let's slap a loop out there on 1585 and see if anybody uses it, right?
Correct.
Okay. That's, in layman's terms, that's what the model is really there for.
That's not what happened, was it?
Well, I wanted it there.
Okay, all right.
So that's where it went. But other than that, we made the model fit.
So
No.
this is loop willy-nilly is what you're saying?
That was very much a detailed route study and
Yeah, it was.
feasibility study went into that.
Anything further for Mr. Lucero? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2025-05 relating to the micro simulation dashboard model and the contract thereof. I've got a motion by Mayor McBrayer and a second by Dr. Wilson to approve Resolution 2025-05. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 10, to discuss and take appropriate action regarding Resolution 2025-06, deleting Task 5.1, which is the electric vehicle study, and adding a new Task 5.5.1, resiliency improvement plan. Mr. Lucero.
So, as indicated in the title there, the electric vehicle study underneath the Unified Planning Work Program is being proposed to be deleted. The goal of this amendment is to align with federal priorities on resiliency planning and shift away from the electric vehicle study due to current uncertainties in the federal programming and funding allocations for that category. As we have recently experienced with as early as last week's sandstorm that covered all of West Texas, North Texas, and stopped flights throughout the region as well as in the country. Extreme weather events and shifts in environmental condition continue to pose significant threats to the transportation infrastructure nationwide. The U.S. Department of Transportation and Federal Highway Administration have recognized the importance of addressing these vulnerabilities to increase longevity and reliability of transportation system across the country. FHWA's Order 5520 emphasizes the integration of resiliency into transportation planning by assessing risks and vulnerability, incorporating resiliency in asset management plans, and addressing resiliency in project development and design, optimizing operation and maintenance practices. Although FHWA currently does not explicitly mandate resiliency planning, they strongly encourage, and can I say strongly encourage, that was actually brought up 3 times during our certification last August when we went through it, that they strongly encourage us. And so that metropolitan planning organizations consider resiliency in their planning products. This aligns with previous federal laws such as MAP 21 and FAST Act, which laid out the foundation for incorporating resilience into planning and development. Underneath the current situation, with ongoing instability in federal grant and formula funding, the electric vehicle study under Task 5.1 does not seem appropriate to pursue at this time, as it lacks sufficient support to give the increased emphasis on, and given the increased emphasis on climate resilience and infrastructure vulnerability, The Resiliency Improvement Plan presents an opportunity to address critical needs and align our region's transportation planning and directives. Under 5.1, that whole task will just be removed. The number will be reserved in case any future planning products are needed, but that actual product and description will be removed. Under 5.5.1, the task will take the funding that was allocated to 5.1, the 11,289, and move it to that subtask. That resiliency implementation plan will become a subtask of the safety improvement plan, and then it will roll up and one product will feed into the next. This amendment will enable us to prioritize climate resiliency, vulnerability assessment, and ensure that our transportation infrastructure can withstand future challenges. At this time, I will go ahead and stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Lucero? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion regarding Resolution 2025-06, deleting Task 5.1 and adding the new Task 5.5.1. I have a motion by Commissioner Dalby out of a second by Dr. Wilson. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Dr. Martinez. Dr. Martinez. Is it, you just got a whole dais full of doctors. We are too. Doctors it is. All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Dalby and I have a second by Councilmember Martinez Garcia to approve Resolution 2025-06. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion opposed? Okay. Opposed by Mr. Warren? Oh, Mr. Atkinson. So motion carries. Motion carries. Did you get that, Tammy? Ms. Walker? Ms. Walker?
Yes, sir.
Did you get the vote on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, item 11, to discuss and take appropriate action regarding MPO funding policy respecting funding allocations in light of current federal executive orders pertaining to transportation grant and formula programs, including, but not limited to, CAT 2, CAT 7, CAT 9, CAT 10, and 10 C.R. All right, Mr. Jones.
Thank you. With the timeliness of our 10-year plan discussion, which we'll get to in a minute, coming at the same time as all the political wrangling with all the federal grant and formula-driven programs, we thought it would be a good time to reevaluate our funding policies and make sure we are all on the same page in the songbook, especially with CAT 2, 7, 9, 10, and 10 CR. The TAC had a good discussion regarding the policy committee's priority project policy, that being to allocate all of our CAT 2 funding to State Loop 88. That discussion recognized that CAT 2 funding, which is metropolitan and urban area corridor funding, focuses on mobility and capacity and usually implementation of traffic congestion mitigation strategies while enhancing safety improvements, not to say the least, that CAT 2 has to be spent on system. And while we could have other on system projects, and we do from time to time, that meet all the criteria, the advisory committee was satisfied to leave the State Loop 88 as our designated priority corridor project. Then the discussion turned to other funding categories and mobility and capacity development characteristics and funding criteria, and again, they were satisfied with our current project selection process that covers those policies, that being decision lens. To date, we have included all the federal requirements and state requirements in the grading matrix, so everyone's projects, all the stakeholder projects are evaluated on the same basis as all the other projects. So unless and until someone says that we need a change in the grading matrix, everything is equal and the playing field is level. And they agreed to that with the understanding that this body, if you want to, can always change the characteristics analyzed in decision lens, and you can change the scoring matrix whenever you want to. So in that regard, unless you have any questions about the discussion, which, by the way, our chair of the TAC, Mr. Criswell, is here, and he can speak if you want him to. All we need is a simple up and down on this issue to leave State Loop 88 as our designated priority corridor project and to leave decision lens in place as our project selection tool.
I think though, Mr. Jones, if the decision of the committee is to leave everything in place, I don't think action is needed, is it?
If you don't want to, you certainly don't have to.
Any questions? Mr. Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Jones, for that update. From a local TxDOT perspective, I would remind the board that projects like Loop 88 are massive, very expensive, require a commitment of all various sorts of funding, and to our local level of TxDOT, we've shown a commitment to that project by, although I have 17 counties in my district, we've committed pretty much all of our Category 11, which is our district discretionary funding, to that project to show TxDOT's commitment to that. We've also committed a very large sum of our Category 1, which is rehabilitation funding to that project, to show a local commitment of TxDOT to that project. And all these are vital when you go to Austin with the Transportation Commission and ask for additional funding from the commission. It shows a unified front from all the players in the room that this is a top priority project. So I appreciate that the TAC recognized that and is proposing to keep things kind of on the same playing field that we've had for a long time, without losing sight of the fact that we do have an awful lot of local streets that need more capacity. There's no question about that. And the city of Lubbock and Lubbock County have both stepped to the plate with bond funding to help show their commitment to these transportation projects as well. So we've enjoyed a very positive relationship in this area for many, many, many years. And that's why we've got what I consider to be, for cities the size of Lubbock, the best transportation system in the state of Texas, maybe even in the country. And it's because of that cooperative nature that we've shown working together as not only citizens of Texas, but Lubbockites, Lubbock County-ites. Is that a right word? Anyway, I just want to throw that out as a TxDOT perspective on this funding system that we have in place. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could we ask Mr. Criswell, Chairman of the TAC, to come up?
Absolutely. Randy?
Hear his thoughts on this.
Morning, Randy. How are you doing?
Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Criswell, for being here.
You bet.
And thank you for being available for questioning. And thank you for leading the TAC. That's very important to us. So thank you very much. All right, Mr. Atkinson.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Atkinson.
can you talk to us a bit about the Alcove project,
About the Alcove project?
please?
You know, that discussion may better pertain to agenda item number 12, but pertaining to the discussion that we had with regard to our dedication of funding and the utilization of the different categories like we've got, we did as a committee feel like that the Category 2 funding dedicated to Loop 88 was very appropriate, and that project is indeed a very important project. You know, probably from a long-term perspective. I remember coming to college down here at Texas Tech. Started out at LCC actually back in 1914, I think as it was. And I think that there were still pieces of Loop 289 being finished up then, if I remember right. I may be wrong, but those may have been repair projects. But what a visionary project that was. And I don't think that anybody, certainly not anyone on the TAC, would ever envision or foresee that Loop 88 project as being anything less and anything less important. We did have some discussion. Like I said, this may be more pertinent to item number 12, but we did have some discussion that I personally introduced about the sequencing of some of the CAT 7 funding, specifically with regard to a couple of Loop 88 projects, and the Alcove project, which is a project that is very near and dear to my heart as city manager of Wolford, but it's also a project that I believe that, I really believe that the feeling of the TAC is that the Alcove project is probably the most urgent and greatest immediate need project that's on that 10-year plan, or certainly one that deserves the greatest and highest consideration that it possibly can. So with regard to agenda item number 11, Mr. City Manager, we did make that recommendation, and we do agree with the current funding strategies.
Thank you.
But I'd like to talk more about Alcove if you want to on the next item.
I think we'll have an opportunity here in this next item.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Any other questions regarding, strictly regarding our funding, our policies and funding, and how we come to a decision-making, and whether or not that needs to be changed today or not? Mr. Mayor.
So, Mr. Criswell, so is your opinion that the Alcove project is sufficiently addressed by what we're going to cover under agenda item number 12 then?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
All right, as any other questions for Mr. Criswell? All right, as stated before, this particular item does not necessarily need action unless we want to entertain a motion to change our funding policies. The chair hears no motion to change our funding policies, so we will move now to item 12 on our agenda, and that is to discuss and take appropriate action regarding Resolution 2025-07 relating to an adjusted 10-year plan 2025 to 34 respecting recent changes in federal programming guidance. Mr. Jones.
Thank you. There is not a lot to say as far as opening remarks are concerned. Our proposed adjusted 10-year plan, and by the way, you have a large copy of the plan, proposed plan at your place, and you also have a large copy of the plan you approved back in January, in case you want to refer back to that. But our proposed plan, or the plan the TAC is recommending to you, addresses some administrative changes that we need to make in the TIP portal to assist federal highways in their review. It moves some money to different projects, considering the instability right now of 10 C.F.R. funding, especially in the out years. And if you look at the resolution in your backup on page 62, it will list all the adjustments that we'll look at right now. If you have the plan in front of you, you'll notice it's colorful. There are several different colors displayed. The important colors that the resolution addresses are the ones in yellow. Particularly in yellow. the brown or orange or whatever color that is, corresponds to the bullet in the resolution about changing descriptions and such, the administrative change for some of those project descriptions. And so we just colored those just to show you that we made those changes. The green or aqua or whatever color that is, simply shows you or highlights for you numbers that Federal Highways wanted us to be sure that we had in our plan, because they use those numbers for their analysis, and that's in there at their behest. Otherwise, there are a series of bullets on the top in the red text on your plan that correspond with the resolution. And so just running down through there, we added project 4501 back into the plan. You will recall that's the bridge at 41, 87 and 41 that the contractor defaulted on. TxDOT now has a new contractor. They have to rebid that project. So by virtue of the process, it was out of the plan because we already had a contractor working. So now we have to go back and put it back in the plan and do all that rearranging. So that's why it's back in there. Then the committee took some CR10 money, again, because of the discussion we had about the instability of that funding source. We took some CR10 money out of the loop lighting project, that is 5036, $602,229 as a matter of fact, and moved it up to the city bus project, 5037. They did, however, leave some money in the loop lighting project just in case 10 CR does come back around. Now, we've been told that in the out years, don't expect any 10 CR money past 26. And we've been told that if the states already have allocated 23 and 24 money in those categories, they can go ahead and spend that money. But that doesn't mean the federal government couldn't decide to go back and claw that money back as well. So we just need to be careful. But TxDOT's going ahead, and if they have allocations out and approved, then they give authorization to spend that money. But we're drawing back 26 because we don't think 26 will be there. So that takes care of that. You'll notice on projects 4021 3C and 4021 3C.1, at the behest of our federal review partners, we split that in two, split it into two projects for their analysis and review. And then what you don't see in any highlighted color is future intent of $50,000. Mr. Atkinson has asked about this several times in the past. Back in '24, one of the actions the board took was to not reallocate that money off of an upland project. So it's still hanging out there. And the TAC, with this edition of the 10-year plan in the resolution, says they're going to hold that $50,000, and pending when we can move it administratively in the tip-step process. They want to put it on project 40-9. And then the updated descriptions that we've already talked about. That, in a nutshell, and you can check it against the resolution, are all the changes that are made, even though you got all the colors on the sheet. Those are the only changes that the TAC is recommending. And again, Mr. Criswell is here to visit with you about the TAC recommendation and these projects. So I'll just yield the floor to him.
Any questions for Mr. Jones first?
I have a question.
Yes,
and
please.
it's actually a correction. If you go to, under Exhibit 1, you have 4501, but on your
You're right.
agenda, it's
We've
4051,
looked at that
Section
a million
1A.
times, and I noticed it this morning myself. We'll change that.
Remember?
Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Criswell, welcome back. How you been doing?
Yes, sir, thank
Okay,
you.
good.
It's been wonderful, actually.
Thank you.
I was wondering when somebody was going to point out that typo. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I kind of have that same affliction. Yes, sir.
Any questions for Mr. Criswell?
I've got one.
Okay, Mr. Mayor?
So could you please explain again, just a little bit more clearly, the reallocation of the money from the Loop 289 lighting program to the city bus improvements? Why are we doing that? You said something about instability or of that program or whatever. Just tell me a little bit about it.
That may be, I may need your help with that, David.
Why are we pulling back 10 CR money?
Mm-hmm.
We have an announcement, and part of this we'll get to in the report section. But we have announcements from the feds that Reader's Digest version says, don't count on 10 CR money beyond 26.
Okay.
And so at the TAC level, in that discussion, we decided to pull that back, even though we did leave a little in that one project, just in case they change their mind. But we don't expect any new 10 CR money after 26, and even the 23 and 24 allocations that we already have are suspect. But we're going ahead because TxDOT tells us to go ahead.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Criswell?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Warren?
may not be for Mr. Criswell, but I'll go ahead and ask. What I'm seeing here, what you're talking about, the only changes in funding that are being proposed at this point is that change to the 10 CR program, right? There's no changes to CAT 2, 7, any of the others?
Correct.
Okay. And then the reason the three projects on the left side of the exhibit are lit up in red, or yellow, I'm sorry. One is the FM 41 project that we have to add back into the plan, as Mr. Jones pointed out. And why are the two loop projects? I thought we always had those set up as two separate projects. Why are they lit up in yellow? What changes are being done there?
You're talking about the 3C and 3C.1?
Yes.
Because FHWA told us to do that.
Didn't we always have them set up as two? Okay, it's just one. But in TxDOT's world, it was always two because there's two separate
Two
CSJs.
separate CSJs.
One is US 87,
Yeah.
now known as I-27.
Yeah.
And the other is
Yeah.
Loop 88.
They-
Okay,
They wanted us to do that for their analysis.
okay. So it's really no change for this group. All right, I just want to verify that's the only changes being proposed at this point. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Dr. Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Criswell. When we discussed the previous agenda item, you mentioned alcove, and it sounded like you wanted to discuss alcove a little bit more with this agenda item. I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you were referring to on alcove.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Wilson. Yeah, we had in the TAC committee, in the TAC meeting, when we discussed this specific item, when we were talking about not about moving categorical funding around, but about specifically the Category 7 money, where the alcove project sits in 2032, and the two loop projects that sit in 27 and 28. I brought up a conversation with the committee that it was my belief that the Alcove project, being a project that ultimately benefits not just the city of Wolfforth. You know, there's been multiple conversations in the TAC where Wolfforth was where Alcove was called a Wolfforth project, and I very consistently abutted that comment with the fact that Alcove is not a Wolfforth project. Yeah, Wolfforth is a sponsor of the project because it lies within our city limits. But clearly, the Alcove project is one that the county saw would be beneficial to the county because they put it on a bond and it was voted favorably, right? The city of Wolfforth, clearly it's important to the city of Wolfforth. It's a project that lies within our city limits, is critical for some economic development of 43 prime commercial acres in Wolfforth. It's important to the city of Lubbock. There's going to be a solid waste transfer station built right off of it. There will be, you know, the city of Lubbock city limits abut Alcove on the east, and there's currently businesses and homes already there, and in a kind of a commercial development up to the north end of Alcove at 66th. Friendship Independent School District has attended almost every meeting of the TAC that I can remember since we started talking about Alcove, and I don't think that's because they haven't got anything else to do. I think that's because there was a need that Friendship recognizes the need for the Alcove project, and so it's a project that almost, I would argue, benefits probably a greater number of our citizens collectively, more urgently and more impactfully quicker than any other project on this list. This is I would argue that the Alcove project is truly the only project that benefits as many different citizens from as many different governmental entities, that being Wolfforth, City of Wolfforth, City of Lubbock, Lubbock County, perhaps even TxDOT. It connects to TxDOT. You know, I don't know what happens in the years to come, but we know that it impacts our school district. So the conversation that I implemented and that I started with the TAC committee was, can we talk about, when we want to talk about, and this is all, of course, based on my opinion, okay? I believe that Alcove, when you look at Alcove, eligible for funding in 2032, and you look at two projects of Loop 88, totaling $29.5 million, prior to the $24 million for Alcove, I believe that Alcove is a greater need, more urgently, and will benefit and be noticed by our citizens more quickly than a couple of interchanges on Loop 88. And that's not an attack on anybody. That's just an observation and an opinion of mine. And so the conversation that we had at the TAC committee was whether or not there was support for moving Alcove up that list, okay, and pushing those two TxDOT loop projects down the list, and basically making Alcove eligible for funding in that 27 and 28 year period of time when there's more money, as you can see, than would be required to build Alcove based on the 2032 estimate. And I really believe that the general consensus of the TAC was supportive of that conceptually. The Alcove is indeed, in most opinions, more important than anything, basically any other project on this list as far as its urgency and its impact. Ultimately, the discussion was, what happened was the representative of TxDOT, Colin Francis, abutted my position and told me that we weren't ready and that we couldn't get that project ready because the project has not been designed to be a federal project. Okay, the design that, if you think back, the design that was done on Alcove was done by the county when you guys were given the head thumbs up by the voters to build it, and then COVID and other things came along, and the money for that disappeared in other projects. And that is not a criticism at all. Believe me, I sit here and watch the capital improvements plan in Wolford, Texas over 3 years increase in price, even post-COVID. So I get the cost escalation issue. And so the project hadn't been designed to be federalized. It had not been at any point going through any kind of a submission and approval process with TxDOT, which is required to get the project federalized and be then immediately eligible for these dollars, okay, when they come available. And so my imploring of the TAC was simply, let's send a motion to the policy committee. Let's send a recommendation to the policy committee that we as the TAC think Alcove should be higher up the list. And the arguments that were made by Ms. Francis that the project, we couldn't get it ready before then, we'd never be ready by time to have those funds, swayed the TAC in a way that I'm not going to say was unreasonable, but swayed the TAC to table that item at that particular meeting. Came back at the next meeting. Commissioner Jason Corley asked me at that meeting if the city of Wolford could develop a plan under which we could demonstrate that Alcove could be federalized in time for those $27, $28. Our engineer, Kimley Horn, Mr. Jesus Sainz is actually in the audience, went to work on that for me and ultimately came back and gave me a recommendation that it would be possible if we started now to federalize to have our Alcove project begin to go through the process, and basically the timelines that would be required, which are start with environmental studies, okay? The timelines that would be required would potentially be complete and have that project eligible for funding in probably the later part of 2028, okay? So I know it's a long story, but I just want to communicate thoroughly. So the TAC met again. This item came up again, I did not press the item. I did not press the conversation at that second meeting. I don't feel like that as the chair of the TAC that I should try to manipulate the actions of the committee. And so I didn't. And ultimately, the comment that I made in that TAC committee meeting, and I'm not ashamed of it, and I would not take it back. I looked at Kylan Francis and I said, I don't understand why TxDOT doesn't look at me and say, how can I help you? Instead of look at me and say, you don't know what you're doing. Then I stopped talking. And Ms. Francis abutted that by saying that I have never asked her for help, so that's why I haven't gotten any. And there was a motion made to send this project list, this 10-year plan, to this committee, and seconded and voted. And I voted in favor of that motion because I believe that as the chair of that TAC, I'm not going to try to control it. I don't think that's the chair's responsibility. So I was satisfied with sending the Alcove project up to the policy committee to allow for you men and women to make whatever decision that you feel like is appropriate for Alcove. I'll tell you this also, Dr. Wilson, if y'all don't mind. The city of Wolford is preparing to build Alcove. It is critical to us. It is critical to Friendship Independent School District. It is critical to economic development in Wolford. And we probably can't realistically wait until 2032 to rebuild Alcove, because any of you who have traveled Alcove probably can see that it may not be anything but a name in 2032, or at least parts of it. So the city of Wolford, my city council, has directed me to proceed with being prepared to build Alcove if we have to. Now, I can tell you that's what we're looking at building is a 3-lane section, not 5. concrete paving, not asphalt. If we're gonna build something, I don't wanna be maintaining it before I've paid for it. And if it's gonna be a 20-year bond, it's gonna be a road that's gonna last well more than 20 years. So we're looking at a concrete design, and that's actually being done right now. That design will be finished within the next 60 days and ready to bid. That's a $10 million project. Okay, you take Wolford is not a big city. You take a $10 million issuance of debt for the city of Wolford under general assumptions, we'll have to raise our tax rate somewhere of at least 9 cents to service that debt. 9 cents minimum. It depends on how the bids actually come in and how our, what the bond issuance looks like at the time. But it will be a tax increase to the citizens of Wolford of at least, I'm going to say it again because this is massive, 9 cents, okay? That's not particularly palatable, but I do believe that the benefit of it to Wolford, even if no one else will help and if no one else cares, the benefit of that project to Wolford is critical. So we're prepared to do that. If the project were moved up higher on this list, like I've tried to get, maybe that buys us a little bit of time, and maybe then we do work really hard toward trying to federalize it. And I don't know what the impact of that is exactly on the economic development that we see coming, that we've been told is coming in Wolford. And we've been told that that economic development needs Alcove to be built. And so the city of Wolford is in an interesting position. We could wait on this funding. We could wait all the way till 2032, but we may miss an opportunity if we do that, or we may delay an opportunity for some economic development in Wolford that is going to come, and I believe is somewhat dependent, if not completely dependent, on Alcove being there. And being in better shape than it is today. When I say Alcove being there, I mean in a finished state of some kind where you can actually drive down it without knocking out an axle. So we're in a spot. The city of Wolford is in a very difficult position. We need Alcove built. We probably can't wait until 2032. But it's going to be a tremendous burden to our taxpayers for us to issue the debt to build a $10 million road. We're prepared to do it, and I've got a city council that is absolutely committed to the project. But it would sure be nice if there were some options for us from a funding perspective. So Wolford's prepared to move ahead. Doesn't change this recommendation from the TAC. Do I wish it had been different? Yeah, sure do. I wish that what I had asked was the recommendation, but it wasn't, and that's okay. It's a committee. We work together. We work as a committee, not as individuals. So I've got a 30-minute slide presentation that summarizes all that. Tammy wants to cue that up. But thank you for listening, and I don't know if that answered all the question or not, but that's kind of the history of the
I believe it did. Mr. Mayor.
So, Mr. Criswell, take off your TAC chair hat and just stand there, what would you ask us to do here now that we're considering this?
What I would have liked to have seen, Mr. Mayor, is a formal statement that we believe if the Alcove project can get ready, that we will fund it as soon as it's ready. That's what that would be the ideal situation for us. That gives us at least another option to look at as we look at the things that we need to see happen and the things that we're going to see happen. And so if I had an ask, that would be it. As City Manager Wolford, that would be simply my ask, is that a commitment that the MPO says we're going to fund Alcove as soon as you can get it ready to fund.
And that you think you might be able to have it ready by when?
2028. But those were conversations, Mayor, that we were having about a 5-lane roadway section, which may not be exactly the same today, but I'm going to go back to something that I said. The environmental component of that project, as I understand it, and I'm going to be the first one to say, I've not ever sponsored an MPO-funded federalized project, okay? So I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that I know everything about it, because I don't. But I do know that there's a critical path to getting that project federalized and through the process. If we build a 3-lane section, I don't think we have any right-of-way to acquire, which is good. But there's still there's still a critical path that's going to involve the environmental studies and all those kinds of things to get through the TxDOT approval process and get it ready. But I do believe that worst case, based on my conversations with our design engineers, that it would be sometime in 2028.
Any other questions, Mr. Criswell?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Atkins?
it's Mr. Warren.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Warren. I apologize to Mr. Atkins.
First off, Mr. Criswell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
That was just rude.
No, Mr. Warren.
First off, I want to apologize to you if it was implied or came across to you that you were treated with disrespect by one of my employees. I will state that was never the intention. Ms. Francis has a lot of experience with these type of projects and how long it takes to deliver them. So do I. I've been doing this for longer than most folks in this room may have been alive. The city of Lubbock County can all attest to the growing pains that we've all gone through learning how to deal with the federal government on developing federally funded highway projects, and it is a long and arduous process. So we still stand available to you and the city of Wolford to advise and help you through the process anywhere we can. I will say that Loop 88 alone, I believe the route study was approved roughly 14 years ago. We've spent the last 14 years acquiring right-of-way, moving utilities. Now, it's a much larger project than Alcove. There's no question about that. But these projects take an awful long time, and I think Ms. Francis probably gave you her experienced opinion.
Yes, sir. I believe
that it could not be ready, because at this point it's not even federally functionally classified to be eligible for federal funds. So we're at step -1 on that project, as opposed to like Upland and all the Alcove projects, the 114th Street projects, all the local city street projects. They were at least already federally classified. So I want to apologize if it came across to you as unprofessional and not respectful. That wasn't the intent. I think Colin could be brutally honest. Sometimes she is with me about the reality of how long it takes to get these projects ready. And there has been hundreds of millions of dollars invested in that loop project so far by the taxpayers to get it ready. And the only thing it's waiting on at this point in time is the approval of the MTP, I believe, which hopefully will happen soon. And then thrown into the mix, just for the policy board's edification, there's that good old balancing of limitations on how much Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 7, Cat 4, whatever we can spend in any given period of time. It's called fiscal constraint. The federal government requires projects to be fiscally constrained. And so there's a possibility, even if Alcove is ready by 28, that we may not have the ability to put Cat 7 into it just because of the federal financial restraint conditions that are imposed on us. So again, finally, what I'll say is TxDOT's more than happy to work with the city of Wolford on developing these projects, and we're all partners here. We work with the city, we work with the county, and we'll be happy to work with Wolford any way we can.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Dr. Wilson.
So forgive my naivety, and Mr. Warren, Mr. Atkinson, I know y'all are very well equipped in this area. Really, realistically, what would it look like to have this project? I mean, this is something we would consider, to have it federalized and ready. I mean, I have no concept of what that timeline actually truly looks like. Because I could be, I don't want to use the word swayed. I know you didn't come up here to sway anybody, but I could be tempted to look at this and say, if it's ready, we could look at maybe reallocating Cat 7 somewhere else other than, and I'm 100% in support of Loop 88. I mean, I drove it yesterday and the project is phenomenal, needs to continue to be funded, don't want to ever see it delayed. But living in this area and the pressure that I get just sitting from the Lubbock side of it, even though it doesn't sit in Lubbock, from friendship, from a safety aspect, from a thoroughfare, from an economically developed, from our transfer station, I see the need. And I know the struggle of a smaller community like Wolford, how to fund something massive. And that's a huge strain on your taxpayers. So I definitely could look at this, but I also want to be realistic on how long does it take to be ready. I mean, is that 2028? And I'm going to ask you guys maybe to help me understand what it really would take to federalize a project and get it ready to go.
I appreciate those comments. My best answer is it takes a long time. Really, the city of Lubbock and Lubbock County, Jennifer's here today. She could probably weigh in on Upland from 66 to 114th was approved by this group in 2010, 12, 14, somewhere in that time frame. We just started construction this year. I mean, it's been 10 years on Upland alone, and it was already federally functionally classified. And that's a matter of the city had to go hire consultants to do the environmental work. The city had to acquire the right-of-way, move the utilities, because the way these things work, the only federal money that goes into these is in construction. All the local funding goes in, it's 100% local funding for utilities, right-of-way, environmental clearance, all those things. Although the feds require them, they're locally funded. So it has to work through the budget process, both with the city of Lubbock, or the city of Wolford, or Lubbock County. I'll be happy to defer to Jared or Jennifer to kind of give a, I don't want to say nightmare story, but y'all know how much work y'all put into getting these roads ready to go and how long it took. And to say, I'm not saying Alco's not important. I'm really not saying that. It is. We're just trying to be realistic here. And this group, over the years, has made decisions on moving projects forward. And once that decision's made, the various parties, either be it TxDOT, City of Lubbock, Lubbock County, boom, they hit the ground running, doing everything they can once it's approved to try and get that thing to construction as quickly as possible. So to change midstream, right in the middle of all that, while all this money's already been expended to get those projects ready, is not my recommendation to this policy group. That's what I have to say at this point. I hope that helped, Councilwoman. Jared, more than welcome to defer to you or the county at this point.
Councilmember McDonald.
Mr. Chair, I understand the urgency of 88, and I appreciate that we're doing Loop 88. But the urgency of Alcove is our major problem. As a council member, I hate to go to my people and say, we're going to have to raise your taxes so that Lubbock County and Lubbock citizens and Wolford citizens can use Alcove and make it passable. It's really hard for us to ask for that kind of money. Like Mr. Crystal said, we got to do it for our economic impact. But it would be great if we could work together and maybe, and I'm new at this, but if these funds could be not stolen but swapped according to the years, that might help us get it moving a little bit faster.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Dalby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know that I understand the importance of Alco. I travel that road 4 times a day. I mean, I have children that go to school. I'm fully aware of the challenges that that Wolfforth faces. I see the importance of Alcove. I see the importance of Loop 88. I was reminded yesterday, and I'm the new guy in the room, so I also recognize that also. We are here to make decisions what's best for this region. I think Alcove is important for the region. I think Loop 88 is important for the region. The red flag for me is stopping midstream and reallocating funds, in essence, altering the plan. And that's the red flag for me. Remind me again, what was the tax recommendation?
If we bond it?
No.
What do you mean?
No, what was
this? Sorry. Exhibit 1. Exhibit 1.
I thought you meant
is
tax
rate.
TAX. Okay, ask me the question again. What was the recommendation for?
You said, I guess, in the TAC meeting that they asked you for a plan. What your plan? Remind me. Your plan was what?
I did not present that plan to the TAC.
Okay.
Okay. We basically had the discussion about this proposed 10-year plan and these things that you've seen with the yellow highlights and the brown highlights, and a motion was made, seconded, and approved to recommend the 10-year plan as you see it in front of you today.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I would just, Mr. Warren, I mean, you can speak to this better than anybody. The pitfalls of changing midstream. What's going to be affected down the line if
Yeah, I hopefully I've kind of tried to say that before. The federal funding and even state funding transportation process is very arduous, and it does take a long time. And you run the risk, and I'll also throw out one of these loop projects that we're talking about is the interchange with I-27. Hopefully in another year, we will have 4 miles of Loop 88 completed on the south side of town. You'll have a 6-lane freeway finished. And if we have to delay that interchange with I-27 any longer, what it's going to do is dump into a 2-lane FM road to tie into I-27. So you're going to go from 6-lane freeway down to a 2-lane road with all that traffic that's from that growing part of the community dumping onto those 2 lanes to go in. That's why I feel strongly that the interchange with I-27 is still a top priority. We sure don't. And if funding gets pulled from that project, we have to start pulling bits and pieces out of that project. And the first thing that would go would be the direct connects, the flyover bridges where you can just move directly from Loop 88 onto I-27 northbound, like we have at Marcia Sharp and West Loop, like we have at South Loop and I-27. I'm sure the city has received numerous complaints about the lack of those connections at Marcia Sharp and I-27 down near McKenzie Park and the county fairgrounds. Having done the design for that personally, believe me, we looked at it, and we have received some additional funding to study that once again. But I really don't think you want to face the public with another project of half finished, and and it's nothing against Alcove. I would say the same thing against any project that came up at this stage of the game and said, I know y'all been working on that for 14 years, but we need that money now, so stop what you're doing. We're going to go build this, because then the next project comes up, the next project comes up, the next project comes up, and you never get the ones finished that you've been working on for many, many, many years. And that's my concern. This group needs to be deliberative in our project selection, and once a project is selected, they need to move at the fastest pace possible through the federal process and the state process to get those projects on the ground and get traffic moving on them. So that's my goal, that's been my concern, and I hope we can continue to move in that direction and explore other opportunities. The city made some decisions on Upland, farther south, to do something different to get that finished. The Lubbock County on Woodrow Road made the decision to proceed and build part of that themselves while they use federal funds to build half of it. So you bring other parts to the game. And perhaps an option for the city of Wolford is to do some kind of more than a 20% share of construction costs. You know, so you're not asking as much Category 7 money. That's essentially what the city did on Upland, correct? And Lubbock County did the same thing on Woodrow, where, yeah, the minimum that you have to put in is 20%, but the feds will be more than happy to take more than 20% if you will really have a strong feeling towards moving that project forward. And the feds don't take it. They just give us less, basically. Or this body puts less in elsewhere. Yes. So I hope that answered your question, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Atkins?
Thank you. Holy cow. There's not one thing that's been said either from up here or from Mr. Creswell that's wrong. It's all right. I do think it's important to reinforce Steve's comments. All of us in this room travel all over the state, and Lubbock has the best intra and intercity transportation network that you're going to find. And I think Steve and Steve's predecessors, city council's predecessors, all to be commended for that. It's important. Would say this body does make changes if they're valid, if they're justified, and if they're properly, studied, vetted, and put together. That's how we made the decisions in 2017 to start dedicating the dollars, the CAT 7 dollars, to Loop 88. That's how we made some changes to assist the county with starting the Woodrow project and go forward. So I guess my question maybe today is more to Mr. Jones. David? There you are. Is that what he was doing? Ducking underneath? David, we know the MTP is held up, not from anything from us, but it's held up by federal highway. Is it essential that this item in front of us is acted upon today?
Is it, repeat that? Is it
Are we going to run into some other issue with one of the 3, 4, 5, 7 letter acronyms we deal with if we don't act on this item today, but rather remand it back? Because I think there's some good and valid questions that we ought to study.
Yes, Mr. Atkinson, I think what has motivated this to come before this committee in the first place was the fear, or at least the acknowledgement that 10 CR money is going away.
Absolutely, and I don't want to lose the 10 CR.
There are components of this plan that we need your action on today in order for the staff to be able to upload the TIP portal so that we are ready for the call. As far as your decision about this project, it could hold a month, but the rest.
But the 10 CR items we need to consider.
And the descriptions.
And the descriptions. Okay. Not in the form of a motion. The chair has not asked for such. Just a comment. Would it be possible for this body to approve the descriptions, the 10 CR, and come back for additional discussion how we spend out the Cat 7.
I think, Mr. Atkinson, I think the direct answer to that question is that this committee has the ability to alter the 10-year plan at any of its meetings. So we could go ahead and pass this TAC recommended resolution today and still go back next meeting after, and revisit. I don't want to preclude passing this based on discussions that we need to have next month or next year. That's the chair stance.
Can agree to that.
And to go back with your previous question, we also need the bridge at 41 and 87. We need that today.
Okay. I don't think I would have an issue voting then for what's in front of us today with a request, not a caveat, but a request. I'd like to see some additional information developed between the city of Wolfforth and TxDOT. How realistic is it? What is the number? 2032 is 7, it's actually 8 years if you count them out. I would presume something could be assembled prior to that. You could become eligible, in other words, Randy. We could get it designated. You do all your pre-clearance stuff. But when is that? You said 2028 earlier? Maybe that's good. But I'd kind of like to learn some more, not at the expense of passing this item today.
And I think, Mr. Atkinson, that's a viable discussion. We can have that discussion. Any other questions or comments from the committee? The only one, Mr. Criswell, I would like to make is that it was just the statement that the Lubbock County voters voted for the Alcove project, and I just want to refute that just a little bit. They voted for a bond package to fund our transportation improvement plan, which Alcove was part of the transportation improvement plan. But it was never presented to the public, we want you to pay for Alcove. That was never done. In fact, when we approved the transportation improvement plan and the $99 million to fund that, one of the first things we did was engineer and plan Alcove. And those plans are still sitting basically on the shelf ready to go for construction money. And I will say on behalf of Lubbock County, we offer those to you. We will. If we haven't already, those plans that we have done for Alcove are ready to go. If you want to incorporate those into a future plan or a future federally funded plan, however you want to do that, Lubbock County will offer those to you.
Yes, sir, Judge, and if I misrepresented anything, I certainly apologize. I wasn't here in 2018, so if I misstated that, you have my sincerest apology. And we do have those plans. The same engineers that worked for you guys actually completed your design, and then working with Ms. Davidson, those plans were basically handed over to the city of Wolfforth, and then we began our modification of that design to build it down to something that maybe we could afford. We knew we couldn't afford to build a 5-lane section. That was beyond imagination.
I think, and also one of the things that had changed was at least the acknowledgement that we were doing it as asphalt, and it's clearly because of the use of this road would need to go into concrete. Obviously, we did not engineer that or plan it to be concrete, but
yes, sir.
You'll make that plan
we are
if necessary.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions or comments? If not, the chair will entertain a motion regarding Resolution 2025-07. This is the adjusted 10-year plan as presented. Do we have a motion? I'm sorry. We have a motion by? Okay. And a second by Dr. Wilson? All right, I have a motion by Councilmember Martinez Garcia. I do have a second by Dr. Wilson. to approve Resolution 25-07. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. And thank you, committee members, for a great discussion. It's very useful to this committee. Thank you. Item 13 is our reports, and there's some updates and things, and I don't think we have anything about flying cars in this report, do we?
No, but
We'll let those go for today. Let's hit the really important ones, Mr. Jones.
yes, I'll skip to the last two items. On page 109, in your backup, there is an announcement from the White House Council on Environmental Quality, and this could lead into the discussion we just finished. That the final rule regarding the NEPA process has been issued that removes some of the previously required guiding regulations on how agencies implement the act. So my directive to the TAC was to be sure that they looked at that, followed up with the links, and read through how the NEPA process is changed with the final rule. I don't know that it will help anybody do anything, but just in conversation, they're basically changing all the lead-in requirements of how you address the NEPA process. So there may be some opportunity there. I particularly challenged the city of Lubbock and the county of Lubbock to look at the link in the announcement and follow up on that to see if there's anything that would work for you there. And then lastly, on page 110 is our monthly financial report through January, or the 33rd percentile. You'll note we are only 21% collected on our revenue, but we are running at 24% on our expenses. And Mr. Chair, I'll stop there.
All right, thank you. In case you haven't had a personal invitation, consider this to be a personal invitation from the chair to attend the I-27 signage ceremony that will be April the 14th at 1:30. This will take place there at 1585, and now what we're going to call I-27. I-27 is now extending south, if not just a little bit. This is kind of the first step. The Ports to Plains Alliance, the I-27 Committee, and TxDOT, and a lot of folks working together to get I-27 designated from Laredo to Canada. And this is a very important step. We're going to have several elected officials from Washington will be here as well. So consider this to be a personal invitation from the chair to all to attend this I-27 signage ceremony, the extension. That again will be Monday, April 14th at 1:30. And I'd like to see you all there, and we pray always for good weather, as always. Oh, I know, it never happens. Is there any other business of the Metropolitan Planning Organization? If not, it is 10:18 and we are adjourned. Thank you.
We thank you for your attendance.